Patriots governing Hong Kong is the essence of one country, two systems, said Xiao Baolong, vice chairman of the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, or China's top political advisory body. Xiao was speaking during a two-day forum to solicit public opinions from Hong Kong on improving the region's electoral system. The speech had drawn wide attention, raising questions over what it means to be a patriot. Some commentators have said what Beijing really wants is obedience and absolute control through inserting patriots into Hong Kong election. Is that the case? How to define patriots in the case of Hong Kong? How to ensure patriots governing Hong Kong in order to safeguard Hong Kong's election security and integrity? What legal changes might be necessary? I'm pleased to be joined from Hong Kong by Henry Ho, founder and chairperson of the One Country, Two Systems Youth Forum, and from Switzerland by Angelo Giuliano, a political and financial analyst. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. Now, Dr. Ho, let me go to you first, and let's start by taking a look at the details of Xiao's speech. He said patriots governing Hong Kong means that Hong Kong must be governed by patriots, and the power of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region must be in the hands of patriots. How absurd it is that in Hong Kong there were people who touted their betrayal of the motherland as political asset and even demonized their own nation as election slogans. Henry, why do you see how do you see the severity of this issue and the fact that Mr. Xia even had to stress this in a high-level symposium on Hong Kong affairs?
I was attending this symposium last Monday, and I think Xia's speech was a very important one, highlighting the fact that the electoral systems, which I think in Hong Kong we have been arguing or debating for more than 20 years. I think we need a new look or review on how our electoral system should go and what it should serve. I think the problem shown in the 2019 district council elections suggested that if we don't have a clear criteria to ensure patriots could govern Hong Kong, we would end up a lot of elected councillors, be they district council or legislative council, entering the councils in Hong Kong, and they may cause serious damage. We have seen that last year in the Legislative Council and also the District Council.
We're going to talk about more details, of course, in this show and the shows to come. But Angelo, let me go to you. You were in the streets of Hong Kong. Did you see examples, for instance, of people who have aspirations to enter into the political structure or framework, but who touted their betrayal of the motherland and demonized their own countries and even used that as political assets? How urgent and widespread is the problem?
Yes, I've seen this over and over. I think this is a very slow process. The meddling in Hong Kong has started since before 1997. So in this hybrid war, they've been brainwashing the kids on the sense of superiority towards the mainland, and this meddling has been in all aspects of society. So it runs, these secession movements runs really deep in the society. So it will take time for changing the minds of those kids who've been brainwashed by Western assets, by Western elements. So we've seen many cases of burning flags and so on. And I think the Hong Kong government was very lenient on that. If you compare to other laws in the West, I give you an example. In Germany, if you burn a flag, you go to jail for 1 year. So this is why we needed a national security law in Hong Kong. And now what they're looking at is having people that will respect the one country, two system, but above all, the one country, because they never respected the one country. And the one country, two system doesn't work if they don't respect the country, and there's no protection of Chinese sovereignty over Hong Kong.
Dr. Ho, you participated in the symposium, as you said, as a representative from Hong Kong. What do you make of Beijing's definition of a patriot in the case of Hong Kong?
I think the patriots governing Hong Kong is the essence of what we call Hong Kong people ruling Hong Kong. And that, in turn, is the essence of one country, two systems. I think patriots doesn't mean we cannot criticize. We can still criticize Hong Kong affairs and mainland Chinese affairs. The critical thing is patriots should not do anything which harms our country, which endangers national security, and which affects the stability and prosperity of Hong Kong. As we can see in the riots in 2019, so many legislative councillors and district councillors took part in violent protests and also all sorts of behavior attacking our central government and our nation. And these are all unacceptable, not only in Hong Kong, but I think in everywhere in the world.
So you talked about many things that a true patriot shouldn't do or mustn't do, but what must a patriot do, for instance, in terms of upholding the idea of one country? Is there a clear or clearer definition now what a patriot must do in that regard?
I think they must respect the fact that, first of all, the People's Republic of China, which is led by the Communist Party, and Hong Kong is a part of China, and is an inseparable part of China, and this is a basic understanding. Actually, they have been required to swear, to uphold the basic law and swear allegiance to the SAR of PRC. So actually, for those who have already taken oaths, they really need to, if they are willing to fulfill or honor their oaths, actually, they are already patriots governing Hong Kong.
Mr. Shao also mentioned another term, which is 坚定的爱国者. Literally, it translates to staunch patriots. What's the relationship between these two concepts, Henry, once again, because this has to do with the Chinese language, and what does that mean in terms of the overall political sense of the issue?
I think he is talking about two types of patriots. What you were referring to are the government officials in the government, and also those holding key positions in the government. They have more power than the rest, and they also have a higher standards of being patriotic, and that includes uphold one country, two systems, looking at the issues of Hong Kong from a nationwide perspective. So these are the additional requirements that he mentioned, compared to the patriots, governing Hong Kong in general. And I think these are very important. We see Hong Kong has been, since 2019, we have been experiencing the riots and the COVID, and I think it's a very important reminder to people in Hong Kong, in particular in the government, and those holding key positions, to really stand up to defend our system, which is one country, two systems, and to really say no to all the acts and behavior, of people who are damaging Hong Kong's prosperity and stability, as well as endangering national security.
Now, Mr. Tian Fei Long, who is the Executive Director of the One Country, Two Systems Legal Studies Center at Beihang University's Law School in Beijing, he said the idea of a patriot still allows those who can criticize the government and the institutional problems, but it excludes anti-China rioters. It reflects, in his words, inclusiveness and pluralism. Angelo, do you agree with this kind of explanation?
Absolutely. I think there's a problem of education in Hong Kong. I'd like to use the terms that Professor Zhang Weiwei uses. He uses 民心 and 民意. 民意 is public opinion, and that is something that can change over time. It can change even overnight. But there's one concept which is 民心, which runs much deeper, and that those elected officials in LegCo need to understand. It is about the joint destiny that Hong Kong has with the mainland, and that Hong Kong shares a future with the mainland, and it's not dissociable. So this is very important, and so patriotism is not something that you have in your genes, but it's something that that needs to be taught and well explained, and this requires understanding of history and understanding where China is and where it is going, and that Hong Kong has a special position in China and will always be special, and nothing will change, you know, like Deng Xiaoping said, 50 years, nothing will change. In 27 years, then things might change. But if this runs well, there's no reason that this one country, two system would not go on. And I think there's also very important elements to understand that Hong Kong, one country, two system is extremely important for China, because it needs to show Taiwan this system could work in Taiwan. And this is one of the reasons that the DPP did everything it could to help the writers in Hong Kong, because it wanted to win the elections. And this is, you know, they went from 30%, Zhang Wen, she went from 30% approval to 60%. So you can see it's a very complex.
Well, we're going to talk. Let's stay on Hong Kong once again, and I want to ask Henry on the same question. Basically, does the idea of a patriot necessarily mean absolute obedience and absolute control from Beijing, that nobody's allowed to protest, to voice their different opinions, and to criticize?
Of course, this is a misconception. First of all, Hong Kong, we are still having one country, two systems. Our original way of life and capitalist system remains unchanged. So when we are talking about patriots governing Hong Kong, we are talking about politicians. Well, they may continue to express their different views to the government on various policies, social, economic policies, but there is a bottom line. The bottom line and the red line is very clear, meaning that we should never seek independence or to act in any way which violates their own oath, or their own oath, and violate the constitution and the basic law. I think it's as simple as that. And Mr. Xia also acknowledges or recognizes Hong Kong's special conditions, where many of our people have been educated in the West and have more kind of a Western values compared to the mainland Chinese. And that's why he reassured that this kind of tolerance, this kind of difference is tolerated as long as we become patriots and we respect, you know, one country, two systems policy.
Angelo, how do you look at the extraordinary attention that has been given to this issue by some in the international media, and also hyping the idea that the idea of a patriot is actually a patriot governing Hong Kong is actually a cover for Beijing trying to crimp, so-called democratic voices or paralyze democracy or pluralism? How do you look at that kind of discussion?
I think maybe the wording patriot might be a little bit too much. What I think what Beijing wants is that those extremists, the radicals, stop insulting China. And I think it's a prerequisite. I mean, how can you be an elected in Hong Kong Legislative Council and insulting China? So and I think there's a lot of room. You can be patriot, but you can criticize. You can criticize the CPC. There's no problem. As long as this is constructive. So they need to have more maturity. So when you're talking about the West, whatever the West is thinking, it's just they want to use Hong Kong in their proxy war, the same as they're doing in Ukraine and in other places with Russia, etc. So I think what China will do is that it will not be influenced by the West is thinking. Okay. And I think especially now, in the West, we experience huge problems of democracy. They're failing democracy. So how can they teach China how to do on their Hong Kong
Good question.
issue?
Okay.
I think it's just hypocrisy.
Yeah, we're going to leave it there. Of course, when you talk about democracy, there is a whole different discussion that needs to be had, but we don't have the time for that for today. Many thanks to Henry Ho, founder and chairman of the One Country, Two Systems Youth Forum, and Angelo Giuliano, political and financial analyst, joining us from Switzerland.